is to be left behind in quest to achieve sustainable development goals, says President Muhammadu Buhari. Federal government commits 291 billion naira for census, commence census to hold in May. Asia-Pacific markets mostly higher as investors look ahead to Powell's Congress testimony. On the program today, issues around the banking sector crisis and resolution options in Nigeria will take the front banner. This is Business Express, and we're reaching you live from Abuja, the nation's capital. My name is Leah Katung, Babatunde. You're welcome to the program. A warm good morning to you. We start by informing you that President Muhammadu Buhari says if no one is to be left behind in the quest to achieving sustainable development goals, least developed countries must give urgent and robust assistance towards unlocking their potential and building socio-economic resilience. This was while addressing the 5th United Nations Conference on Least Developed Countries in Doha, the state of Qatar.
As a matter of urgency, there are a number of priorities we have to focus on to help achieve sustainable development goals in these countries and ensure their prosperity. There is no doubt that the least developed countries need enormous financial support and investment of enormous resources to reduce poverty, create jobs, combat hunger, expand social protection systems, and ensure quality education.
Also, Iran is seeking to collaborate more effectively with Nigeria towards deepening and expanding their relations in the oil and gas, agriculture, and other critical sectors for enhanced socio-economic well-being of the two countries and their people. This came to light when President Muhammadu Buhari granted audience to the Iranian Vice President Mohsen Mansouri on the emergence of the UN Conference on Least Developed Countries in Doha, Qatar.
Nigeria is a non-aligned country. We have our independent foreign policy that is not, we're not dictated to by any other country. And I think Iran understands that and understands that as a big country that is not dependent on any other country and not easily influenced by other countries, that Nigeria is a country that, they can aspire to have closer relations with, especially trading relations, economic relations, and, and also in other areas. They really want to expand these relations into all sectors.
Oil prices edged slightly higher on Tuesday, bouncing back from early losses as top oil executives at an energy conference in Houston discussed supply tightness and hopes for rising China demand. Brent crude futures were trading up 35 cents at $86.18 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures were up 78 cents at $80.46 a barrel. Last week, the Supreme Court directed that the old 200, 500 and 1,000 naira notes should remain in circulation to the end of the year. Financial correspondent Bosde Abel interacted with some residents of Abuja on the cashless policy vis-a-vis the court ruling.
Supreme Court doesn't have any jurisdiction over monetary policy. CBN is an independent somebody under the president. So what they are doing, I can't say whether it's good because I have my money, but I can't touch it.
There are about 9 banks around here. The ATMs are neither paying. There is no money inside the banking hall. In fact, withdrawal and issues are not being attended to.
By 8 o'clock, they fixed this canopy that we should sit down. We sat down, they went inside. Nobody came out to address us. So we just decided to say, okay, let us wait till 4 o'clock.
Economic development is contingent on productive investments, and financing of such productive activities can be obtained through 2 channels via capital markets or banks. In modern economies, these 2 channels are complementary, but the role of banks is clearly central. Banks are key players in the financing of economies, and when their own financial position prevents them from performing this function, economic growth is compromised. To shed more light on issues around the banking sector crisis and resolution options in Nigeria is a banking expert, Dr. Boniface Chizia, who joins us virtually from Lagos. You're welcome, Doctor, to Business Express.
Leah, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good morning.
I hope you have some rains. We have some rains here in Lagos.
Okay, great. How is the heat over there?
Well, it's come down. So, in spite of the tension in the environment, we have some rain and it's come down. So we thank God for that.
Yeah, we got some relief yesterday too when the rains came here. But for starters, what is happening to our naira and the banking sector?
Well, I think it's something that is strange. It's something that we are not familiar with. I've never seen anything like that before. You know, because it's not one of the things that banks must avoid. If somebody coming to a bank, he has money on his account, and then he comes to present his check, and then it's not honored. You know, under normal circumstances, that could lead to a run in the bank. Well, of course, you know, the problem is this. Now that it's cuts across, it's all the banks. There are no exceptions, but I think it's a terrible thing to happen. You can't have a bank account, you put your money in the bank, and you go to the bank, and you're not able to get it. You know, one of the things that made people that affected people embracing banking is the fact that they felt that they felt more comfortable, felt more safe with their monies under their pillows. They felt it's within reach, and so on and so forth. But you know, so we've come a long way, and we're talking about cashless policy, and then people were still having this problem, and it's lingered. One thought that it was all leading up to the elections, presidential elections that took place on February 25th. We thought that after that, it would begin to ease. Of course, it's eased a bit, but I think that the challenges are still there.
Well, this policy, when it started, the change, the redesigned policy, as soon as it took off, we began to experience fluctuations in online transactions with a whole lot of disaffection from that end. And then it looks like it is taking forever for banks to sort out transaction errors, but yet they're seeing huge profits from online transaction fees, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that probably the online thing, well, most people are embracing online now, which I think is, they say every cloud has a silver lining. So I think that that might be the silver lining in this cloud. So my person that supplies water here normally will pay cash, and they all carry POS. So we don't pay POS. I go to market to buy things, I pay POS. I think that that might be in the development. But I think that in developed economies, that's the way it's done. People don't carry cash. But I think that what's happening here is that it's happening suddenly, and we're having lots of challenges. You take the online transactions, one of the things that's happening is that the traffic online also, it has a limited capacity. And so if the traffic online is increased suddenly, a quantum leap in the demand online, then it's bad to have this experience we're having with people getting online and they're not being able to transact and so on. And then, of course, if you are smart enough, there are times of the day when it's easier to do online transfers.
Okay. Now, this development, I guess it has its positives and its negatives, of course. Perhaps from your expert point of view, you can tell us how this is telling.
No, sorry, Lee. Someone's talking in the background. That's affecting a transaction, conversation. Somebody's talking in your studio. Okay, all right.
So I'm hoping that you can tell us how this development is affecting individual financial plans and SMEs. How is this development affecting them?
Well, I think that it will affect everybody, because if you're not sure you're going to get cash, in as much as we are pushing for cashless, certain things you need cash, to transact. And so if you're not sure you get cash, then it's bound to affect your financial transactions. There are some payments you need to make, and there are certain things, that token, that's not much, that you don't necessarily have to do bank transfers. And so, so it's definitely bound to affect people. But like I said, I would expect that elections have the problematic elections. I think is now off the way for now, although it has not been resolved. But we expect that after the elections, that we'll have some calming down, and that things will begin to normalize.
Okay, then we're yet to get a clear-cut direction on the ruling by the Supreme Court. At best, how soon should we get some headway from parties involved? Because I understand legally they will have to examine the come to an agreement.
This is happening because the central bank does not given any specific instructions. I think that the central bank has called, I read in the press, central bank 20 and the bank has not speak. When the central bank has not spoken, the banks do not take instructions from Supreme Court. I might see this opportunity to say that I think the Supreme Court should be able to take itself off these matters. I think it's supposed to be a court of last resort. When we have issues with Supreme Bank making a statement, and the statement are not being, and gives a ruling has not been observed, it's not good for the country, it's not good for the economy. Because you cannot have an economy where you don't have rule of law. So I think that we're in a dilemma in this respect. Even investors coming overseas, one of the concerns they have is the rule of law. So they have a contract with you, and sanctity of contract, for instance, and that is underpinned by where you have rule of law. So I think it's unfortunate it should be happening. But I hear some banks on their own are beginning to pay out the old currency notes. But even those who are recipients, they are challenged because they take the notes from the banks and they go out there, and most vendors and so on are not ready to take the old notes. So I think there's a dilemma, and I think that earlier this is resolved, the better for all concerned.
That they cut our ratings, which is one that the presidentials have come and gone. We are having the subnationals come to go, looking at the situation before us.
Well, I think that the investors have greater, more intelligence. Most are not waiting for rating agencies, which they come, they have their own. There are periods and times when they announce their ratings. But I think that most people who play in this environment, they have their own intelligence. They gather it every day. You go to the press, whatever is happening here. You go overseas, and you look at the elections, and you look at the editorials, negative editorials, across board about the elections. So they know very much about what's happening there. So let's not play the ostrich. I want to, pretend that, what's happening, people don't know. People are aware, they know what's happening. All we need to do is to quickly, put our house in order.
Okay, so before I let you go, what do you see as likely implications for the nation's banking sector in the short and in the long run?
Well, I don't know who is interfering. Anyway, for the banking sector, I think that the banks eventually, banking is a profitable business in the sense that what would happen is only that maybe the level of profit might drop That's what has to happen. But before long, banks will pick up. There are no ready substitutes for banks within the economy. So we don't have any fears, but certainly there are some issues. Some bank branches have been touched, So all those ones would cost some money. So yes.
Okay, I must sincerely thank you, Dr. Boniface Chizia, for always making our time to give us some insights into the financial and banking sector.
Thank you, Lee. It's my pleasure always.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
So we take a trip to the official exchange market and see how the Naira is trading against other currencies. The World Bank says it has donated about 12 billion US dollars, 5.5 trillion naira in subsidies to Nigeria and other countries to fight hunger. Half of the money will go to Africa to help some countries to cope with food shortages and fight food insecurity on the continent. Washington-based bank in its response said that local food prices are still high globally, especially in low and middle income countries. Let's now see the prices of other commodities. Now the federal government has approved the disbursement of 308.4 billion naira worth of promissory notes to 199 exporting companies. A statement signed by the head corporate communications Nigerian Export Promotion Council (NEPC), Ndubeze Okeke, the disbursement came under the Export Expansion Grant Scheme. The executive director, CEO of NEPC, Ezra Yakusak, while issuing letters to some beneficiaries of the scheme in Abuja, disclosed the approval and commended the federal government and the National Assembly for approval and in claims to the beneficiaries. Also, the sum of 68.3 million naira was approved for 13 beneficiaries in respect of stocks of outstanding negotiable duty credit certificates. As preparations for the 2023 national census reach the advanced stage, the federal government is relying on key stakeholders for technical and financial support to enable them cover key activities that have not been implemented. Nekaoko reports that this was the crux of a high-level partner engagement organized by the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning in collaboration with the National Population Commission and United Nations Population Fund ahead of the population and housing census.
All our development partners, corporate bodies and other key stakeholders. Their host believes they are critical to the actualization of the 2023 population and housing census. For now, the federal government has committed 291.5 billion naira to the conduct of the exercise and requires an additional 327.2 billion naira, a gap which they believe stakeholders can fill.
It is important to note that 60% of the funding and other requirements of the previous census, the 2006 census, could not have been achieved without the invaluable support of the development partners.
Censuses all over the world, the average is between $4 to $6. Nigeria's $6 per person, you will agree with me, is very, very reasonable.
We've reached a point that in a few weeks we'll be conducting census for Nigeria.
When you contribute to the census in Nigeria, you also contribute to the global promise and achieving and delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals.
The ministry says a basket fund managed by the United Nations Population Commission, UNFPA, will be established for the redemption of the pledges.
And so we move to the stock market, where it resumed this week positive, setting aside losses recorded on Friday as investors gained 41.6 billion naira at the close of trade on Monday. The all-share index advanced 0.14% to open this morning at 55,605.57 basis points. 123.5 million securities worth 2.4 billion naira were traded in 4,076 deals as equity capitalization climbed to 30.2 trillion naira. Trustcore, Guarantee Trust Company and UBA were the most active stocks at the end of the session. A quick stop at the global stock market for some updates with Boss Abel.
Investors will be listening into the comment from Powell this Tuesday for clues on the central bank's next move on rate hiking, as well as the state of the economy. European markets are heading for a mixed open, reflecting similar trade in Asia-Pacific markets overnight, as traders looked ahead to Powell's congressional testimony on Tuesday and Wednesday. Asia-Pacific shares were mixed. Nikkei rose 0.25% at 28,309.00, while the Hang Seng Index and the Shanghai Composite lean on the negative territory. U.S. stock futures traded marginally higher on Tuesday, as traders also await Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's latest comments on the state of the economy. Dow Jones Industrial Average rose by 25 points. S&P 500 futures gained 0.10%, and the Nasdaq 100 futures also appreciates 0.08%. For markets in Africa, South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 projects marginal gains this morning, while others are yet to resume. Boss Abel, Business Express.
Thank you, Boss Day there. And of course, we wrap this episode on this note. Remember to send in your comments, observations, and suggestions. Also be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTA's channel. You can also communicate with us via our various social media handles. Business Express returns Wednesday at 3 p.m. Don't forget, the cash crunch is still out there, but while you carry out your financial transactions, be watchful, be mindful, and God bless Nigeria.
From dusk